Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Accidental Isolation, where we like to bring on guests to speak about a moment in their life where they may have been isolated, whether that's physically, mentally, or emotionally. Today we have the wonderful Breonna on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
A part of this season, in this episode, we will be filming here at Wentworth and Finn, as you see, right? They are a bakery in Camp North End, in the Noda area. So if you ever find yourself around this area, want something sweet or a quiet place to come study, please come check out Wentworth and Finn and Miss Sam. She's amazing and she's really good in the kitchen. So let's dive into this episode here. Breonna here is a mental health advocate, right? Everything she does is the advocacy for mental health and transparent about her life and telling you through her story how she's able to maneuver through life. And that aligns perfectly with our podcast, right? We bring guests on to tell their story about their isolation so that through stories you'll be able to learn and, hopefully work through your life and work through your isolation. So, Breonna, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here.
Good, good, good. First, I'd like to thank you, and I like to thank every guest. One, for just giving me your time.
Yeah,
Everyone's time is precious,
of
and
course.
I appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable enough to come and share your story for the people to learn from.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
So my name is Brianna. Also, Healing Hottie is my brand on Instagram and all social media platforms. I am originally from Cameron, North Carolina.
And
Um,
where's that at?
oh, that's just
I've never heard
outside.
of that.
I know, just outside of Fayetteville.
Okay.
It's so small, you drive through it in about 2 minutes. So I typically tell people I'm from Fayetteville, and it's really right outside the city.
Okay.
Um, and most of my social life as like a kid happened in Fayetteville,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm from Fayetteville. So yeah, so growing up as a kid, I danced, sang, I was in theater, golfed, horseback rode, you name it, I did it.
Okay.
And it really set me up well for adulthood. Moved to Maryland for about 6 years, stayed there for some time, started my career in IT. As life would have it, it brought me back home to North Carolina in 2021, where I really started this venture and figuring out like who I was and what I wanted to do, which gave birth to Healing Hottie and just exploring life and how do you pivot after something has happened that you weren't expecting to happen.
Yeah.
And it's led me down this path now where I'm a mental health advocate, content creator full time, and a model.
Oh yeah. That's exciting. That's exciting. And I love how you even said like you already knew like when I had to come back to North Carolina, it was like it's time for a change.
Yeah,
Because like tech and mental health, like although mental health is everywhere, but like
yeah,
they're two different, career paths, right?
for sure.
What did you do in tech?
So I did a number of things.
Okay,
I
yeah.
started off in customer service and then ventured into
Okay.
IT support. From there, I became kind of like a systems architect.
Yeah.
I managed a system called Jira. I also did some like project management and e-commerce
All
work.
of
Like
it.
I did a lot of things because I worked for a startup, and it's a very stressful time. But because there was so much opportunity to venture into, there's
Yeah.
so many things to do to support the business. I learned a lot while I
Okay.
was there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
project management is a skill just like you can take into life. Like
absolutely.
understanding how to set things up and follow through with plans and stuff like that. Especially when you're working through mental health issues or working through isolations. Like you have to have a plan in place, right? You have to have
Absolutely.
these tools in place
Yeah.
so that you can get ready to fix and work on this project and
Hmm.
release the new you, which
Yeah.
is always reoccurring.
Yeah.
So before the show,
Hmm.
we've already spoke about like what accidental isolation is,
Yeah.
right? A moment in your life where physically, mentally, or emotionally, like you find yourself isolated. It can look different, and it does look different for many people.
Hmm.
Some people have one big isolation, like one big pivot, one big thing that just changes the trajectory of their
Yeah.
life. Some people have many isolations that go over and over. And I always like to add the fact that like we're on this show here today to talk about our isolations, not because we've went through them and now we're perfect, but we've went through them, we learned something for them, or we learned something from them that we
Yeah.
can carry on in our life continuously.
Mhm.
So, yeah, let's dive into maybe one or two or how many ever isolations you've been through,
Yeah.
and then we'll just go from there.
Okay. Well, the year was 2017. I just found myself married. It was August 2017,
You just
actually.
found yourself like it
Just
just
found
happened.
myself
You
married,
woke up
you know.
married.
I know. But I met someone. around 2016. We dated, felt really good about each other. I'm going to go ahead and be honest. I didn't know what feeling good about each other enough to get married really meant until
Yeah.
afterwards. But we felt really good about each other, and we were in love, so to speak, and found ourselves married. And it didn't feel like a mistake at the time. It didn't feel like something that was wrong to do. It felt like the right thing. Though now looking back, I could see I should have waited. We both should have waited and just spent more time understanding ourselves and what the structure of marriage should be. So we found ourselves married, and I really thought this was the best thing for me. And I was really excited to embark on this next space. We were very confident in our journey and where we were about to go. It wasn't until early 2018 where I started to notice that I leaned very heavily on my value and identity um, from him in that marriage.
Like I'm his wife.
Oh, I'm his
Yeah,
wife,
yeah.
and
That's all you are.
that's all that I
Okay.
am. And I leaned on him for everything. If he felt I looked beautiful that day, then I felt beautiful.
Okay.
I isolated pretty quickly from my family. I didn't talk to them as much after the wedding.
Now, was all your family still here? Like, is all your family in Fayetteville, or what?
For the most part, most of my family is from all over North Carolina.
Okay.
So both sides of my family are from Wilmington, North Carolina, and of course I have family scattered here and there. But so it was really easy geographically. And then we weren't in that space with my family at the time where we talked all of the time. So it was very easy to just kind of really focus on my life that I was building there. And of course, naturally, what you do with newlyweds is that you give them some space to kind of fill each
Yeah,
other out.
you gotta let 'em be married.
Let them kind of figure out marriage and living together and all of the things. So that naturally happened. And what we quickly found out is though we had done a lot of preparation to get married, I didn't understand what it meant to be a wife, and he didn't understand what it meant to be a husband. And then we didn't know how to communicate in a very healthy way. And so that just spiraled more out of control when you're spending a lot of time together. Most of the work week, we both work from home. And so we were always in each other's
Yeah,
space.
all day, every.
And so what quickly became like newlyweds and happy, it felt like two caged birds, and we were very just everything that we hadn't healed, we brought directly into the relationship, and now we were each other's discomfort. Now, whenever I would come home or would talk to family, oh, everything is great, everything's fine.
Why do you think you? Why do you? From the perspective of doing it, and from the perspective of now looking back at it, why do you think you try? Like, why do you think you had that mask on, or you put that facade over your marriage?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because is it like, are you afraid of their judgment? Are you afraid? Because some families like ridicule you, like I told you not to do that, I told you not. And then some parents just, or not just parents, but some families like they may judge you. So like, were you afraid of that, or did you generally wanted to put up a front that we were good, or did you generally feel like you were good? You're just going through typical, because like you said, this is your first marriage, so you don't
Right.
know.
Right.
You don't know what marriages look like. So are these the typical like ups and downs of marriage, and we're really good? We just have some arguments, or were you knowing that like, hey, we aren't really good, but I don't want them to know that? Like, what was you thinking like during that time?
Well, during the time, I knew that we both came from parents who divorced.
Okay.
And so there was a huge fear, I would say on both ends, of like, whatever this is, we got to figure it out. Also, when you get married, if you surround yourself with enough married couples, they'll tell you if you can make it to year 7, you're going to be fine.
That's it. Seven's
So,
the number of completion.
so we had a lot of context that there was going to be some difficulty. The other thing is that my family was super proud of me, and this was kind of the first time I felt like a consensus that my family was proud of me, and I relished in that. And so to try to communicate anything otherwise would have I didn't want to lose that feeling of
Yeah.
being proud.
Like you're kind of on a pedestal to them, like, hey, she's doing
Yeah,
great
she's doing
things, she's
great.
this and that. It's like,
Yeah,
so you don't want to tell them any negative thing.
yeah,
I can understand that. Like coming from like a being an athlete,
yeah.
right? Being at the top of like all Americans, right? Being, playing professional football, things like that. When those things start to be taken away, it's like I don't want to say that because not that I want to like it's not that my ego is so big I don't want them to see me not like this, but it's hard because people treat you different.
Yes,
Unfortunately,
they
like
do.
you can't control it, and as you live through life, you realize that hey, I can't control it, so I shouldn't worry about it, right? But in those moments, like it starts to feel bad, like you're getting all this praise, like I'm doing good, I'm doing this, and then it's like when those things are taken away, it's like oh, yeah, I'm just Breonna, I'm just Chauncey now, I guess.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
guess,
yeah. And not only did we come from both of our parents being divorced, but at least on my mother's side, all of their marriages ended in divorce. And
okay,
so it really felt like, no, I can't, I really
you're like I
can't
have to be the one to
be,
make it.
I can't be the
I have to
one.
make it.
um, and so there was a fear, there was a deep fear of that. Uh, and then I also say, because I didn't know myself, I didn't understand what a healthy relationship should look and feel like. Um, and all of my value came from him. When he told me that I wasn't a good person or I didn't do this right or I made a mistake, it hit different. And so
Yeah,
I felt like solely I was the problem in the relationship. And so to then tell my family, hey, it's not so great and I think I'm the problem,
yeah.
whether I knew if it was
Because
true or
that's what you're
not,
thinking at the moment.
right,
Like I'm the problem. He keeps telling me I'm the
the
problem.
problem.
So
So,
I definitely don't want to tell y'all the marriage isn't good, and I'm the reason it's not going good. That's a
you
double
know,
win. I don't want to.
that,
Yeah.
I'm sure they were like, what?
Yeah.
They would start asking questions. And one of the biggest things about isolation is that as you start to come up out of that or have a willingness to come out of it, people start really asking questions and you're forced to reflect. I didn't want any questions. I didn't want to reflect because again, I felt like, maybe I was a problem. So I'm thinking a year, we're going to be fine. Fortunately, we had some counsel in the beginning of our relationship. We had quite a bit of counsel, and they encouraged us to seek therapy, couples therapy. And so, how we started is that we ventured into a space where individually we both sought out therapy. And again, in a space of isolation and in therapy, naturally, to come out of that or to step into therapy and do it in a productive way, you have to be willing to answer some
Yeah. You
questions.
gotta. Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
open some things up.
You gotta be able to do the work.
Now, at the same time, I worked in DC. So I lived in Maryland, worked in DC, and the job was extremely stressful. I had one of the worst managers known to, known to man, and it drove me to a space of panic attacks. Like on the job panic attacks,
Yeah.
hair falling out like crazy, and then I go home, and then it would be a problem. And so I didn't really have an outlet or a safe space to really say like something has to give.
And decompress. Like you're home in your marriage, you should be able to come back from a rough day at work and release. Right.
And
Take a deep breath and exhale.
yeah,
Instead of holding it in because now
yeah,
you're going into part two. Yeah.
yeah. And then, and the other part was when parts of my marriage would reveal itself at work, I would have that same manager be like, "Are you sure? Are you okay at home?"
Yeah.
And then I would go home, and then my husband would be like, that's not a healthy space for you to be. So I'm like, what?
Both of y'all telling me I need to leave the other place, but it's like y'all both the place I need to leave.
And so my only not even a safe space, but my only really outlet was happy hours after work with my
Okay.
coworkers, and even that had to be kind of limited.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you got to get home.
gotta get home, and then with my friends, we kind of talked about things that were going on in the world. My coworkers, so to speak, we would talk about things going on in the world or things like kind of upsetting us at work, but we weren't really talking in
Yeah.
depth about our
Yeah.
lives. And so it was a nice little band-aid, but it wasn't really getting to the root. So now fast forward towards the end of 2018, I'm in therapy, and I'm really trying to explore how I found myself in a space where I could be in such a stressful job. And naturally, one of the questions is, well, how do you decompress? Like, what's home life? Like, what's your husband like? And I'm like,
Is this what they're asking at
yeah,
work?
they're
Okay.
asking me at therapy, in
Oh, at
therapy,
therapy.
in the
Okay, yeah.
therapy. So my therapist is asking me, what's home life like? And I'm like, it's great. It's great. It's good.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, I feel like you need some hobbies. And because I used to dance as a kid, I was like, I've been thinking about dance again. And so she's like,
Go
great, we
do
love
it. Yeah.
that. I was like, well, I don't know how my husband would feel. And so she was like, well, let me meet him. I want to meet him. She was like, because I'm sure he'll be fine. So she meets him. And now she's like, okay, I see what you're
It
saying.
might not be fine. Okay.
And she's like, well, let's now shift, like, the job. You can get another job. She's like, let's shift to talk about your marriage. And I'm like, no, no. So then now I'm shutting down in therapy, and that wasn't happening before, because now she's touched a hot button
Yeah.
for me. So it was really a space where I found myself from 2018 up until 2020, where I fell into a deep depression. Like, I was like, if I say too much, they're gonna find out more.
Yeah.
They're gonna know what's going on, and I'm just not ready to
Ready
go
for that.
there.
And that's the trick. I think that's the tricky part about therapy and just like the self inquiry work. One, like it's not linear, so it's like you can be good one day, bad one day,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And especially someone like me, like I struggle with a perfectionist like syndrome, like superhero, like I can do no wrong. Not literally, I know I do wrong, but like in everyone's eyes, I need to do the best I can, and I need to be the best I can. I need to be perfect, right? Knowing I'm not, right, through yoga and just mindfulness training, but knowing I'm not. So when I first started therapy, I was like, man, I can go in here and I can just lie. I can tell her whatever I want. She has to kind of believe it and then work through there. And I just started therapy fall of 22.
Okay.
I had just left a relationship as well.
Okay.
And fall of 22, and I left the relationship because I was like, hey, I know I need to like find myself.
Yeah.
I'm a mental health advocate. I'm doing all these things. Go to therapy. Like you can't be an advocate for something and not try all the resources you have.
Absolutely.
So going in there and just like doing those daily things and like not really seeing where it's working and understanding. And after about 3-4 months, she kind of apologizes to me and was like, hey, I've been doing this all wrong. And after doing that, we try like different strategies and different techniques, one being like shadow work. And then I had to realize that I had to apologize as well because I wasn't being myself, or like, not that I wasn't being myself. I was saying I was telling the truth, but I was saying what I knew I needed to say to steer the conversations in the places I wanted them. Why? To protect myself, because I don't really want to do the work. I want to do the work, but I don't really want to, you know what I'm saying?
Go there.
I want to be fixed, but I don't want to fix things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that just in general because like they want to do it on their terms. Well, unfortunately, like your health, just like any other thing, you break a bone, you break your wrist, like it's not on your terms.
Yeah.
You got to do the right things to heal it properly.
Yeah.
So I understand like how it may feel like going through that therapy and realizing like I actually don't want to do this anymore. Because now I feel like I wanted here to be a safe space, and you have to go through dark times, or you have to go through those isolations to come out on the good side. And I think you maybe were already going through that, so it's like I don't want to go through an even darker isolation or a deeper isolation. So like going through that 2019 through 2021, like you were speaking about how you were really depressed and really like dark, and like you were still married at this time, correct?
Yes.
So how did things continue after or through therapy?
So I got to a space where I wasn't letting my therapist in.
Okay.
And then it resulted in things were starting to get worse at home. It ventured into and not because I labeled this. It was through a therapist who identified that it was becoming emotionally abusive and financially abusive. And so it's now in a space I kind of feel trapped. We had moved into this home, and it was just so, it didn't have a lot of windows, and
I'm sorry. That's no, I'm sorry.
and it's important. It's
Yeah.
important part of the
Okay.
story because there was a shade in the window that was, there was like a blackout shade. So the room got perfectly dark. And I could just sit in there for hours and not realize how much time has passed. And so what ended up happening right before we moved up, there was an attempt on my life because I could not be in this space where I felt trapped in between the two. And so I tried therapy for a bit, and then we moved into this house, and I was like, actually, I kind of like this dark room. This feels safer.
Yeah.
And then if we weren't arguing, he would just kind of go to his side of the house, and I'd go to mine in this little cave. And it felt good for a time. It wasn't until, again, somebody kind of peers in and asks some questions. It wasn't until a friend visited me. She wanted some cornbread really bad. She was like, "Can you make me
You
some
said
cornbread?"
cornbread? Okay,
She
now I gotta try some of this
I'm
cornbread. You
known
gotta
for
play.
my cornbread now. So she begged me for some cornbread. And so she was like, I'll come by right now. And I was like, this is not a good time. But she comes, and she just kind of get the sense
Pays
that
attention.
it wasn't good. And so she started inviting me out more. And I was like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm
So
ready to be in that space.
was it you don't know if within yourself if you're ready to be there, or was it like in this space that I'm in life, like in this marriage, I can't necessarily
Both.
be okay.
For sure. Both for sure. Because at this point, I didn't feel beautiful. This house was really helped coddle this depression.
Yeah.
And this marriage was absolute hell at this point. And I truly felt like I didn't have enough to pull myself. I could pull myself together to go to work, but beyond that felt like too
Because
much.
work has benefit. I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
Right. I have a benefit from there. This is a mutual agreement. I hate you, you hate me. Just give me my money. Right.
Absolutely.
So you can kind of maneuver around that. And
Yeah.
it's easier to cope with things like that. Whereas this marriage, you know,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So 2019, and the response after the attempt was, and this is why it's really important to know how to support people through a crisis. Not, well, it was some shaming. It was some, don't do that, and just it's going to be okay, that kind of thing. And if you ever need to talk, let me know.
Yeah.
And so because it had gotten to that space where now I feel more like the problem, I'm isolated, and I don't really have a safe space.
Yeah.
I started to go within myself. But as I'm in this space of isolation, the only thing that I knew to do, because I didn't really feel comfortable to go back to therapy yet, was pray. And I just started praying. I don't even know what I was specifically hoping or praying for, but I was just talking to God. And it would just so happen that some of the married couples that we were around in our counseling, they were like, "Oh, let's the wives get together. Let's kind of hang out and let's talk." And
Build
so
a community of something that we're all going through, a marriage.
absolutely. So they started to come around. They'd actually come over to the house, and they're encouraging me and this kind of thing. And it wasn't anything specific that I let them in on.
Yeah. Just being in that space
Just
of
being-
warmth, love, community, like
Yes.
someone not needing something from you like a marriage or a
Yes.
work, right? Just being able to be free of problems, stress, having to prove something, having to do something, just being in a space of being. Yeah, because oftentimes like just give you that sense of relaxation. How long? So how long did that go on, or how was that beneficial to you through those moments?
So there were a couple instances where we hung around each other in that year just the wives. And that really felt good that I could have a space to just be with other women, and then to kind of hear things that they were having challenges with in their marriage was encouraging. Like, I'm not in this alone, and there's hope on the other side. But my depression, it's so thick that even he was like, okay, you got to like meditate. We're gonna have to get you some books. You got to get back in therapy because this is like you are depressed. And so for him to even say that, even though he was a huge source of my happiness,
Nigga, this because of you. You need some books. You go get fixed. I get fixed, right? Okay. And it's funny. It's like a lot of times when we go through things, it's like we think we found the source of our problems. It's like, stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go do that, and then I'll be better. Yeah. And then like at the end of the day, you realize that it's like, I cannot control how you treat me, what you do, like, and I'm sure you'll bring that up soon. It's like that. You got to a space where I can no longer control. Well, I never could, so I can't control this. Now I'm starting to understand this, and it's like, if you are a major source, the things that I can do is leave.
Yeah.
Good morning, Sam.
How are y'all doing?
I'm doing good.
So we have some of our best sellers, which is the bourbon butter oatmeal cream pie,
Yes, ma'am.
French vanilla macarons, and our salted caramel bread pudding.
Oh yeah, this one's
I'm excited.
And which one's like your favorite?
I like salt incorporated into all of my pastries, so I would go for the salted caramel bread pudding myself.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys.
Yes, ma'am. Wentworth and Finn test tasting.
I'm excited.
I am too. Now, I'm not a huge fan of macarons, but I'm excited.
I'm not either.
They remind me of SpongeBob. So when they did so I'm gonna try the macarons first.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Oh yeah. See, I knew I was gonna end up liking them.
What are you trying?
That's the salted carrot. I'm trying the macaron. Forgot what flavor, but it's actually pretty good. That's the salted caramel crumble.
Bread pudding. I knew I was gonna like that. It's not as sweet as I thought. It's not
salty?
overly sweet.
Yeah.
Not overly salty, well balanced. Very good.
All right. Now, growing up, these cream pies, me and my brother used to fight over them. Now, it wasn't a homemade cream pie like this, but let's see. Can I break into this? No. All right. I'm going to do it this way. I don't know.
I'm not a macaron girl,
I'm not.
but this is good.
This is good.
This is good. It's not, usually with macarons, they can be kind of hard.
Yeah, it kind of melts. And I forgot what flavor she said, so we're going to have to go back and look. But the actual filling is real good, too.
Yeah.
I think it's like a cinnamon or, what did she say? But it's actually good.
It's very good.
I don't know how we're going to eat this, though, I'm not going to lie, because it's hard.
Okay. I'm going to take your word on it.
Okay.
Go ahead and dive in.
Okay.
Oh, what is that filling?
Making a mess.
Is it good?
Scale 1 to 10. What's it looking like?
Scale of 1 to 10, that's a good 8.59. Because it's like the Walmart oatmeal cream pies, right? Times 10, because it's so much thicker, so you actually get to taste the oatmeal. And then there's 2 fillings in there, so I don't know if y'all can see this, but like something came out the back. I don't know what that is. Maybe like a cinnamon or something. Mind you, I know nothing about baking, so I don't know what that is, but it tastes really good. Yeah, that was good right there. That's the best one.
If you like sweets, but you don't like things that are overly sweet, all of this at the mark. Very good.
Good. During this time, is he being more supportive or just more so like directive, like you should do this, or is he actually Is he becoming more of a listener? Because as you said earlier, like you really have to understand how each person needs to be rebuilt, or like needs to be not rebuilt. I don't want to use that word, but like needs to be supported
Yeah.
through these times, good times or bad times,
Yeah.
right? In the marriage, was there a point where he became supportive, or he became maybe curious about how he can support you through these times?
There were glimmers. And honestly, I really felt like it was deeply connected to those moments we were around married couples. Anytime we were around that group of people, we had the best of times. Like we really, and so with this group of married couples, and I would implore anyone to do this. But we played a questions game. So everybody wrote down a question on a slip of paper. We put it in like a bag or a bowl, and then somebody pulled out the question. And of course, it's anonymous. We don't know who wrote it down. So somebody reads it, and then we answer it from a married perspective, but also a male and female perspective. And it was just a diverse group of married couples. And we even had one couple, they didn't believe in marriage, but they were life partners. And so even that added a new perspective. So some of the questions that were placed in there, it helped us kind of have moments of strength within our relationship, because we were like, did you ask that? No, I didn't. Afterwards, and really kind of talk about, like, even I will never forget one session. Someone asked, "What do you do when you don't love your wife anymore?" And so, it kind of like everybody stopped in the room, because we were like, "What? What do you mean you love?" So afterwards, he's like, "Did you?" It said spouse, not wife. Sorry. What do you do when you don't love your spouse anymore?
Yeah.
And so afterwards, we're like, did you write that?
Yeah,
And I
'cause
was like, did you write that?
Because whoever wrote that
What?
may not love their spouse anymore.
And so it really created this, like, we had a couple good weeks, because we were like, I don't ever want to find out that you don't love me like that. And how do we get to a space where we're not just waiting until those moments to find out, stuff like that. So we did have good moments. We did have
when you were actually working, like when
yeah,
we were working on the marriage,
when we were doing
like,
the work, things were good. And we just like to be silly too. We had silly moments as well, but those were short lived. It was always kind of a return back to a problem or an unhappiness or a disconnect, and you can't ignore those. Like, what is the baseline that you're returning to?
Yeah.
That's where you really have to do the work.
Because like a phrase we've always used in like football or just athletics, and that I carry into my life, is that you never rise to the occasion. Like there is no such thing as rising to the occasion. You fall to the level of preparation you've done.
Absolutely.
So like I want to ask real quick, like you would say, like when you were in these spaces with these families, or not families, but the other married couples and things like that, you were training that baseline. Really quick, to go back to the beginning of the marriage, I know you said it was only like a year and a half before y'all started to get married. Do you think that there was a strong enough foundation within the actual relationship? Not even think about marriage or my girlfriend, but within the relationship between them, because everything is a relationship. Me and you have a relationship. It just depends on what it is. Do you think there was a strong enough relationship between you all that created this, or do you think that was a source of the problem, that we never created like a strong enough relationship to fall back on?
Yeah. No. And it was easy to believe that we did, because we had group couples counseling, we had individual counseling by 2 different counselors. And so we thought we had done the work.
Oh, before marriage, you had
We had all of that. And so and we had really strong counsel that, they had been married at that point for 20 plus years, still deeply in love to this day. And so we really felt like, oh, we got the right mix of things, but we didn't understand what doing the work was. It's great to show up to therapy or show up to a session or stand in front of the couples counseling and be like, okay, so for this project we did X, Y, and Z, but then we're not really communicating like that when we go home. And so that quick, in looking back, for sure, we didn't have the right foundation in place before getting married, and we thought like just going through the process was enough. Yeah.
So as you're going through these times, and now he's a parent. Like now he's like, hey, you need help. You need to do things. This is still within the marriage. Where did you start to notice? Because at this point you're closer to the divorce than you are at the beginning of the marriage, correct? Yeah. So where did you start to notice? Like we joked earlier, like you're telling me I'm depressed, and it's like, hey, it's you. You're the problem. So what did it look like to start to notice this isolation? Like to start to notice that I've known I've been depressed because I started to do the work. I've done the work. The work worked for like a little bit, and then she asked a question that I ain't liking, and it didn't work no more. So when did that shift start to happen for you to actually make a real change? Because like you were going through the motions, you were showing up, and then at some point you actually started to do the work that is needed to be done. Yeah. That is, that brings fear. That is scary. Yeah. You started to do that work. When did that work start to happen, and what did that begin to look like for you?
It was 2020. The pandemic really forced everybody to look at themselves and the situations that they found themselves in. And we were in the space, we wanted to buy a house. And, sometimes you could look back on things in your life where like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. But on the inside, you're like, please, let's not do this thing. We're not there. But I didn't quite know how to say any of that.
Because we're still married right now.
We're
so
still married.
I can't tell you I don't want to buy a house because then it's like giving away my plan.
And I was still a little shut down where I would be like, yeah, okay, sure, that's fine. Let's do it. So 2020 happens. We decide to move into his mother's basement.
Okay.
And then March, the world shuts down. And he's like, well, we don't know how long we're going to be here, so we're going to transition to my father's basement. So we move across town into his dad's basement. And I'm really like, I am depressed. I know how it is with Black families and a Caribbean family at that.
Oh.
There's no room for depression.
What is
There's no room for, I don't feel like really talking or hugging today or doing this. And so I was like, I'm concerned that we're doing this. I don't know. And he's like, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And I'm like, So we move there and it's a problem. It's immediately a problem. So I'm like, okay, I got to do something, but I'm not really sure what to do. So I'm thinking about therapy, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to be open about everything that's going on. So it just so happens that my sister is having a baby, and she's like, I really need some help. But it's a pandemic, so we're trying to figure out logistics. And he's like, well, why don't you go to North Carolina, stay for like a month, maybe some change, help her. That way you can like quarantine and then come back. And so that's what I end up doing. So I'm there from end of June to like mid-July. And then I come back home. It's my sister's birthday. She doesn't have anything planned. I go back again. Yeah. So and looking back, there's all these moments where I'm just kind of forced out of this bubble. Like, no, you got to move. So, okay, September I come home for her birthday. I go back home. I have no reason to come back to North Carolina. Right?
Yeah.
Right? We agree?
The birthdays are over. The baby's good.
Baby's good. My uncle passes away October 2020. Unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Now you've been sick for some time, and now my mental health is in a spiral. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to grieve and be depressed, so I need something. So
nor have space to, because I'm in the basement of my husband's dad's house.
Yeah. And well, fortunately, around this time, so September, I come home. We closed on the house in September 2020. So I'm actually out, and I'm supposed to be settling in my new home, but my uncle passes away, so I come back to North Carolina. And I am now like, I don't know how to do this. This grieving is not something I've had to do a ton. And I'm like, okay, I have to get help, because it's not going to come from anywhere else but therapy. So I have to really give this a try now. So I'm looking up therapists to find one. I'm feeling really good because she's got this welcoming energy, but she kind of sounds like a homegirl when I'm on calls with her. And so I was like, okay, I can talk to her,
We
and
can
this
do
is
this.
this is not bad. So okay, we start therapy, and I'm very focused on my confidence and grieving. This is what I tell her I want to work on because I'm still like, my marriage is not great, but it hasn't been great.
Yeah.
And, I'm the problem. So if I just work on me, I'm going to be okay. So we start doing the work and she starts digging. Um, but I'm still like, no, I'm grieving and this is a thing. And so let's just focus on these few things. And she asked me, this is the very first time she asked me, was not the last. She's like, is there anywhere you can go tonight? And I was like, well, where would I need to? It's a pandemic, girl.
Yeah.
Where am I going? And she's like, no, I know it's a pandemic. But she's like, I want to make sure, you're okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So Thanksgiving is now coming up. And my aunt, she says, all right, I'm going to see you Thanksgiving. I said, girl,
I'm
I
on my
have
way.
been, no, I was like, I've been in North Carolina, like back to
Oh,
back to
okay, yeah.
back. I haven't even really settled in my new house yet. Girl, I'm not coming. No. And I was back. But this time he came home with me.
Okay.
And this was like, other than that July when he had brought me to North Carolina, was like the first time he spent an extensive amount of time around my family. And so my sister had some concerns in July, but she was just thinking like, oh, that's just married, that's married couple stuff. But this time, my family, the things that they had seen, they were very concerned about me. And this was the first time I experienced that with them, to the point where now, as I'm leaving, my aunt is about to cry.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I picked up on that.
Yeah.
Is she like afraid of what's going on in the marriage?
Yeah, for sure. And so I come back home. I tell my therapist of like, this was a trip and all of the things. And she's like, again, she asked me that same question. Is there anywhere you can go? So I'm like, girl, I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about that I'm not seeing. But all of these things, I'm like, okay, something I'm clearly missing here. So let me just start to ask some questions in reverse now. And so I asked my sister, I was like, when we were home, I kind of felt like this, maybe our aunt was about to cry. What was that? And she said, oh, I'm so glad you said something.
Finally,
Because we're
I
a
didn't
little,
want to bring it up.
I didn't want to bring it up, but we're a little concerned about you. And so she started to lay out all the things that she had seen or they had seen from their perspective. And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, well, I mean, I thought that you guys kind of picked up that we weren't okay, but I'm fine. But I could, after all that, I'm fine. I just gotten to the point where I was like, no, I'm not actually. So I start to let her in. And the thing about therapy and support is that you have to have a willingness to let them in and be honest enough to, even when it doesn't make you look great,
Yeah.
so they can really support you. And they can support you when things get really tough, because things are going
They
to
know
take a
how
dip.
to. They know how to support it because they asked and you answered. You gave them the tools to support you. Because until then, like, can't read minds. Like a lot of people bring that up in like relationships, like intimate relationships, but that's in life in general. Like especially with family. I've known you since I was changing your diapers. We were playing. I know you my whole life. I know you. When in reality, like once we leave the house, even in the house, you don't really know each other, but unless you ask those questions, where you actually need support. And yeah, so you started to realize that I had to let them in if I can get the support I need. So you're starting to let them in. Now you're getting more support. And then how is this helping you in life?
Yeah. So now this journey that I originally started with my therapist of confidence, my family is really like, girl, you got to speak up for yourself. And So I'm like, okay. So I sit him down to have a conversation of like all the things that were not working. And I said, I want to start off by apologizing because I realize I have not been as honest with you as your wife as I should be about what's not working for me. And there wasn't a great reaction to that, but I was okay with that because now it's all out in the open. So I gave him a list of 8 things. And of that list of 8 things, I said that we need to both individually be in therapy and we need to go to couples therapy. Great, you would think. But now I'm so out and open and exposed with my family. My mom and my sister, aunt, and cousin are calling me daily, multiple times a day. Just, hey girl, what you do? Oh girl, what you cooking tonight? And I thought it was, oh, like they really missed me. No, they were very concerned about me, and I appreciated that space of where I didn't have to do this life thing alone anymore. So, and because of the pandemic, I was fully working at home now. So my job is not even remotely a stressor to me. I don't even care because I'm having this safe space that I'm creating within my home with my family, just calling me. So we venture into 2021. We were really giving it a try. And now my therapist is almost every other call is like, girl, I really need you to find somewhere to go because now it's all out in the open. And when you start to open up those Pandora's boxes that you've been kind of keeping shut and sitting on and sealing for a long time, it is going to let out some stuff that you may not be as prepared for, or it was inevitable because it wasn't working to begin with. And so that's what started to happen. Couples therapy is not going well. Therapy is going great for me
I'm doing good.
individually.
I'm fixing, you know what I'm saying? I'm fixing myself doing the stuff I got to do, but
um, and he stopped his therapy.
okay.
And even his therapist was like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And okay. So I was like, well, that was one of the contingencies that we both individually had to be in therapy, and I needed to be in couples therapy, or we need to both be in couples therapy, and that's not going well. So my therapist keeps asking me if I have a place to go. I'm gonna take a few weeks and just breathe and come up from air. And this was really the first time I had like a structured, let me take a breath. Um, and I needed it. It was hadn't felt that relaxed in years, and this my family was so amazing, and it wasn't about are you okay, until I got ready to go back, and it was such a needed space to, after you've been isolating, to have some fun, to breathe a little bit, to not have an agenda. I didn't realize how important that was. And so now I've come up for air, and I'm like, okay, I feel encouraged enough to go back, and I'm trying to make it work, and all of the things. So we have a session before we go back, and it just is like no. And so
Because you got one person really doing the work, really optimistic, really ready for change. And
and
then we don't know the other person, but from what you're saying, you have another
yeah.
one that's just showing up, like just going through the motions and not really doing the work that needs to be done.
And even through like talking to him, like as I'm preparing to come back, I'm even questioning. I started to doubt the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like, well, maybe I was wrong for taking a breath. And my therapist is like, girl, no, this weird. Now we're going backwards. No, ma'am. Like we gotta do. So I go back, and I am super prepared. And one of the things my therapist says is like, we got to stay on these calls. We got to keep doing the work. But the other thing is that my family, because they're now all plugged in, they're like, if you go home and it doesn't feel right, you come back.
Yeah.
Okay. I go home and it's immediate. It's just like, no, I shouldn't have come. Like, I should have just Okay. And we, unfortunately, in this relationship, we had very winded arguments. And this was a very winded argument. And so, as I'm just kind of realizing, I'm like, no, this is not working. And I had already told him on the call, like, I think I'm going to need some more time
Yeah.
to just kind of figure out. Um, he's really not interested in that, but he could tell that I've had enough. So we put a pin in it and we have a conversation, one final conversation, and nothing has changed. All the apologies that he's given, he's not sorry, and he says that verbatim.
Okay.
And so I'm now, because I've had this space to breathe after I've been in this bubble for so long, and I've been able to think clearly, and I've been able to equip myself with better ways to view and value, ways that I desire to be communicated with, and how I want to communicate to others and be treated. I'm like, no, this is it, and I have to stop trying to make this space work for me when it's not.
Yeah.
And so we separate. I file and move back home, and I haven't looked back since.
I haven't looked back since. Um, and it's just, from the story I hear, it just took like one removing yourself out of that
Yeah.
situation, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even gonna say this. I'm gonna let you say this.
Yeah.
So we leave the divorce. I mean, we start the divorce, start a separation. We're gone. We're
Yeah.
moving back home, and now you're just kind of starting anew, right? We're not perfect now. We aren't the best. We probably feel the best we've ever felt, right? But we're still, that work in progress. But we're safe.
Yeah.
We're safe mentally and physically and emotionally, and we feel like we're in a space where we can start
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah.
How we usually end the show is, right? So the catchphrase of the show is putting tools in the toolbox of others. And what that phrase simply means is, as we spoke about, she knew the tools. She had the therapy, she had the faith, she had the family, but none of those things worked until she picked them up and she started doing them themselves. So that's why that's the catchphrase of the show. She's here to tell her story. Through vulnerability, you'll be able to learn some of the tools that she was able to use to move throughout her isolation. And we're putting them in your toolbox, but at the end of the day, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
And this platform is here to hopefully give you those tools so that you can continue to do that work. You can continue to put more tools in your toolbox, because as she expressed it, she had a screwdriver. It was therapy. It was working until it wasn't.
Yeah.
She had a different task that she tried to build, and the screwdriver wasn't working no more. So she had to put it away, and then she turned to faith. And that happens in life. So the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better you're off, the more resources you have. So to end the show, you've already mentioned throughout the story, but let's give them a call to action, right? Let's give them 3 tools, 2 or 3 tools or more if you have them, that directly or specifically helped you throughout this isolation.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say, and this is attributed to my therapist at the time, but you can't heal in the spaces that hurt you. You really have to take a breath and allow yourself time for reflection and to really evaluate what your needs are and what you desire. I would also say therapy for sure, and find a therapist where you feel comfortable enough to at least just talk a bit about yourself, because that comfort in that safe space has to be established and built. I'm not going to ever say don't try therapy. Try therapy even if you don't feel ready, and allow them to support you through the journey of letting people into spaces that you had never before. And then the third thing, I am nothing without God and my support system. So, really creating something to anchor you and having people around you to uplift you when those thoughts of anxiety or doubt creep in and distract you from who you know you're called to be. Or even if you don't know who you're called to be, having people around you that can identify that and just keep you uplifted through challenging times, for sure, is a part of my toolbox.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. As always, when we end the show, everyone has something, especially now and then. day and age, right? Whether they're working on something for themselves, whether they're in the business and they work for someone they want to promote. So we always give the space at the end of the show to promote anything yourself or whatever you have, so that they can follow you, they can follow along with your journey of life, and they
Yeah.
can continue to, just gain inspiration from you.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram or all social media platforms at Healing Hottie. That's healing, HOTTI, and the number 3. And then I'll be dropping a podcast myself called Mental Moments with Healing Hottie, where we'll be finding the ingredients to make life sweeter.
Also, along with season 3, right? We understand that we aren't all in a pandemic anymore. You don't have all day to speak. We don't have all day to sit and listen to an episode, maybe watch episodes. So accidental isolation is bringing a different medium to you all. We'll be releasing an ebook soon. That way you'll be able to read and just have a different medium than listening and watching a video and listening to their stories. You'll be able to read about their stories. This ebook is filled with wonderful insights. It has journal prompts at the bottom. It has checklists at the bottom. It has tool lists. It has a lot of applicable things that you can use, as well as quotes directly from the guests from seasons 1 and 2, which direct embedded links so that you can follow along in the story as you read about certain isolations and things they've been through. So definitely make sure you check out the ebook and you get that a purchase soon.